I have a secret weapon for your business, for your organization, for your career, for your life. I got a secret weapon, an oft overlooked secret weapon. And that secret weapon is storytelling. You probably could have put two and two together by the very loud and grabby thumbnail photo that I had. It's your organization's most valuable tool, and not a lot of people even consider it, much less put the resources behind storytelling. Telling the story of your organization, whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit business, is how you get stakeholders invested. And that could be a donor if you're a nonprofit. That could be a volunteer, committee member if you're a nonprofit, or if you're a for-profit business. Storytelling is how you get people interested, not just in your product, but in your mission, but in your organization. That's how you develop those super fans, if you read Pat Flynn, or that's how you get those loyal, return, repeat consumers, those true fans that will come back and purchase and engage and interact and evangelize on your behalf. If you tell an effective story about your experiences and your expertise in your industry as a career developer, a career seeker, or professional, you do that on LinkedIn, and next thing you know, you've established yourself as a thought leader in an industry. It makes it easier for you to find positions if you're looking to grow and expand or move or find a new gig or whatever. Storytelling is such a valuable skill. We've invested a lot in storytelling over the last year, and we could still do more with it. We want to tell people the story about how the Veterans Chamber is helping the entire Wisconsin economy, creating economic opportunities for veterans, for military family members, for surviving dependents, for caretakers, and how empowering them helps the entire Wisconsin economy. We want to tell that story. And we want to tell not specifically like we do XYZ, but we want to tell the stories of the people who we impact and how and what the end result is. This person started with X, we provided X support. This is, like those stories are compelling, and they get people to engage and volunteer and come to events, and like nonprofit, for-profit, doesn't matter. If you are not invested in storytelling, if you don't have someone on your staff who is capable of telling a compelling story, you need to reevaluate. If you don't have your mission statement should be compelling. It should almost be a little mini story in and of itself. As a professional, your elevator pitch, or a business owner, entrepreneur, your elevator pitch should be a compelling story, right? There's so many parallels here. You got to be able to spin a yarn if you want to be successful. And there's nobody better in this entire planet Earth at telling a compelling and engaging story. And he's laughing at me right now behind the scenes, but I mean this. There's nobody better at telling a compelling and engaging story than my friend Justin Kern. Now, I worked with him back in the day, years and years and years ago. And he has since transitioned to being the regional director of communications for the Red Cross, which is like such a great fit. He's a published author. He tells stories, compelling stories. And it's perfect for him because there's nobody better at it. And I'm so thankful in this month where we are talking about nonprofits and community service to bring him in, obviously given the fact that he has worked for nonprofit organizations, but to bring him in and to share his expertise with all of you. We haven't had a storyteller. And so I'm very excited for you to hear firsthand how he tells the Red Cross's story and how he does that to help others and further the mission and the vision and the aims of the organization. Really built it up, man. I know he's going to live up to it. This is good stuff. I'm very excited. We're going to get into it right after this bumper. I think that bumper's too loud. I think Justin behind the scenes just jumped about a foot in the air. Sorry about that. I may have to dial it back a little bit. Anyways, Justin Kern, my friend, how are you?
I'm well. That buildup, I really have to bring it. But I mean, that is part of storytelling too, right? You want to build up and bring people in. I mean, it's,
if I introduce you as the world's greatest storyteller, and you can't rise to the occasion, then you might not be the world's greatest storyteller. I don't know.
Yeah, right. It'd be a Zora Neale Hurston, Dennis Johnson, step aside. Justin from Milwaukee's here.
Before we get into storytelling about organizations, I want to tell a story about a tragic experience that you endured this last weekend. For those of you that don't know Justin, he is a lifelong, diehard Buffalo Bills fan. Tell us a little bit about what you were going through in those last few minutes of the game.
Yeah. I am the co-president of the Milwaukee area Buffalo Bills backers. We do meet at Stenny's Bar and Grill. If you are interested in joining us, we'd love to have you. And it was ultimately the game, the ups and downs, and I do mean ups and downs, were a reminder of kind of the true heartbreak and reality, and reminders about life. That sports, for a lot of fans, especially winning teams, typically the Packers, my condolences as well. Fans of winning teams, you like sports because they are an escape from life. I solemnly believe that enjoying the Buffalo Bills, particularly being from Western New York as I am, is a reminder, a cold, hard reminder of life.
Of the reality of the futility of existence.
Yeah, right. That it ends badly in the same way for all of us. And even, with Paul Bunyan at quarterback, doing folklorish tales of athletic greatness.
Incredible player.
Still, we're not able to slay the giant in front of us in a way that will live on, much like wide right, forward lateral, for hockey fans, no goal. And now we will have 13 seconds onto our resume of pain. But what makes me, there's only one other game that hurt worse than this, Super Bowl 25. But what makes this feel okay is reminding myself that after Super Bowl 25, we got to go to 3 other Super Bowls, and that there is a lot ahead of us that is extremely exciting.
You guys have a bright future. Bright. This isn't the end, I don't think. I'm sure you'll be perennial contenders here moving forward. Yeah. So enough about sports, I suppose, because it's depressing for us to talk about too.
That was about life, but sports, sure.
Yeah. Just when you score that last minute touchdown, you die, or whatever. Life has a way of just cutting you off at the knees sometimes. So your career brought you to the Red Cross, and you have since been the regional director, essentially not the official job title, but you're the chief storyteller for the region. What does that mean? What does that look like? And how do you use storytelling to kind of further the Red Cross's mission?
Right. I mean, thankfully we have a brand that most everyone can recognize in some capacity, but folks may not always, they may have different entry points into what we do. And so what is awesome about my role, I have a fellow staff member here in Wisconsin, and we have 30 volunteers that help us just on the storytelling and social media and communication side of things. We are able to dive into what kind of our focus is the impact. What does it matter that we have these programs? Why is it important that we go to a home fire or collect blood? And so at the end of the day, what we're always trying to do, and what I tell other folks that are in this kind of similar role, remind them, is that it's nice that you have the programs you have and all that kind of thing. You have to not just have a why, but a so what. You have to make people outside of your organization understand who the person is who was displaced from the home fire on 31st in West Wisconsin, and that they are your neighbor. They're not just a number, that this is someone that's your neighbor who the day after Christmas, the first day of Kwanzaa, lost their home, lost everything they have. And that because of your support, whether financially, our great volunteers on the ground. That is why it matters that we exist, is that person receiving help when they needed it most. And so just examples like that, right, is that's what I try to focus on with our work, is to try to share the impact of why we exist in the first place, why we've been around for more than 140 years. Shout out Clara Barton, 200th birthday just passed. If you're always every single episode of Jeopardy, Clara Barton will be the answer if you're looking for the angel of the battlefield question or answer. But yeah, I mean, it's really getting to that impact beyond just the brand, the recognizable brand, beyond the kind of what you think people know, bring them to the mission, to the impact, so that they can, kind of like you mentioned, that's how we've been able to sustain and keep going, is because people hear and see that impact, and then they want to join us. And thankfully they do.
So is that the difference between just, reciting a news story or passing along information and actually telling a story? Is it pulling into that human element? Is that the difference? And how do you differentiate between a house burned down and Jane's house burned down?
For sure. Yeah. And so my background is as a journalist for 9 years, covering daily news and the tech industry, before kind of going into the nonprofit space. And there's two kind of aspects of the storytelling. So a lot of times we will have, for our constituents, we will do things like what we would call an impact report. And that would have the just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing. That would have the data about how many volunteers, how many meals, that kind of basic stuff. But even in those, I try to sew in the feature part. I mean, we are feelings driven beings. We can all the reason and data in front of us, it's great, it's helpful.
We've proven that doesn't matter to us.
But honestly, at the end of the day, we are driven by what grabs us and what inspires us. And that, especially in the nonprofit space, or, I think this is true of a lot of sales positions too. You want to inspire someone to be a part of what you're involved in. And so even in those fact sheets, we try to add an element of like the military, like the service member we were able to bring back home to be with their family in an important moment, which is an important part of what the Red Cross does. But I think the thing I try to spend the most time on and bring even just a little piece of it into all our social media, into when we're talking with the media, is that in journalism, we would have called it a feature story or a profile story. Talk about the person who is the volunteer and why it's important to them, not just that there is this program that can do X, Y, and Z, because it really is that, feelings driven aspect of, what we're able to connect on the feelings level is that's why people are going to be a volunteer or donate blood with us or whatever it might be.
And it's not just for nonprofits that this applies to, because, for example, if you want to sell somebody an iPhone, you could tell them that it's affordable, it accomplishes X, Y, Z, and tell them everything they need to know about how it will change and upgrade their lives, and still have less success than the person that can paint a story and paint a picture in that potential customer's head of them visualizing themselves holding the phone and what they can do with the phone. And, it's that human element, which I would think could get exhausting. And so here's what I want to ask you about. And I do want to talk about your military work too. You had mentioned that briefly, especially with bringing the refugees from Afghanistan. That's very, very important, especially to our audience. But I just have to ask, in doing disaster response, for example, a few years back, my hometown of Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, experienced a explosion because of a gas leak downtown through streets where I rode my bike every day when I was a kid. A firefighter who I went to high school with, didn't know personally very well, but went to high school with, perished in that explosion. The pictures from that, I'm getting chills thinking about it. The pictures from that event still just floor me to this day. And I remember in seeing a lot of press about this, seeing a video from the Red Cross and you being interviewed and being strong and confident and, we're here to help, and conveying that, when I'm sure deep down seeing those things probably stabbed your soul a few times. How on earth do you get past that? Is just the fact that you're doing a good thing overarchingly help you, or are you haunted by some of that imagery? How do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah, I mean, while Sun Prairie was especially for Wisconsin folks in the last couple of years I know we were extremely proud to be able to be there to open the shelter and help folks, because that the downtown was devastated. The family, obviously, we work with firefighters every single day, and some of our volunteers, knew him well,
Right.
and so it becomes very personal, especially the work we're able to do here in Wisconsin. I think something that I try to remind myself is that I try to think about things in the terms of, I'm not talking for myself per se, that I am helping to get information in that instance out about a shelter in case someone has not heard that we have a shelter. That's kind of what scares me at the start, is to make sure that as much as possible that we're able to let everyone know our services. That's something I'm keeping in mind. But from the personal side of things, it can be really challenging. Especially places that well. That's Milwaukee gets me a lot because I live in Milwaukee, and the fire situation is a struggle there. But even places that I've been new to. So I went in 2020 in the fall to spend a couple of weeks in Northern California, where to help with the wildfires. And I'm from Western New York and have lived in Milwaukee, between those two. We don't have wildfires like they have out there. So
right.
Flying into that, I literally had a physical, when the plane was landing in Sacramento, I had a physical gut reaction coming through the haze of smoke. There was like something in my soul that said, you should be going away from here. You should not be going to here.
Right.
And what kept me going was like getting on the ground, getting in my car, going to the Red Cross office where they were just like shuttling hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meals to people at hotels and shelters, and meeting the volunteers and knowing that I was part of something much bigger to help people through whatever they needed right now, whatever that was. And as challenging and uncertain as it may be and I'm sure first responders deal with this, to an exponential level, but as uncertain and scary as it may be in the capacity of serving, when you talk with people who are going through it, it's so much darker and worse, and would be that much darker and worse if you weren't there. And so I try to remind myself of that I per se, I am not the hero stepping in there, but that I am able to, from the marketing communication side of things, share the stories of our volunteers who are on the ground there, the ones that are like working the forklifts and going. Mike Woods was a guy who was going like every single, he was nonstop. He worked every single day for a month. He was going to hundreds of hotel rooms to bring people meals that had no other food.
Wow.
People that said that a woman told me that we came up with, Mike and I went up to the front door, Mary Ford, she answered the door and she said, "This will be a celebratory lunch." And we said, "What?" Mike got to know her pretty well. And she said, I just found out that my son is alive. And that is the gravity of what people are going through. And so, when you face something, there was some uncertainty even in Sun Prairie of like how many people may be missing or that kind of thing. So when you're in a situation like that, even answering an uncertain as you may be from, again, the marketing communication side, the first responder side, people on the front lines of military, I can only imagine being in service and coming across these scenarios. what drives you is that you are a part of at least a force to help with positive change and help change whatever dark uncertainty may exist at that time. So that's what kind of, that's what I try to think about. It's hard. We have mental health people on staff that, especially the wildfire, I took advantage of those folks during the wildfire thing, because it was like, it's still that you said haunting, and it really is. I mean, you were like in an alien world. It didn't feel, I was like, how do you people live like this? And they're going to work. Like, there's a lot of people just like going through the regular day. I'm like, and they're like, well, how do you deal with the blizzards? And I was like, touche. But yeah, it's, I mean, we have mental health folks on staff that check in with us, and health services people too. But, ultimately what I kind of remind myself is that if I'm able to be part of someone's story and help share what they're going through, that will ultimately provide kind of more assistance and keep an eye and ear and in the world watching on things that have happened, because there's so much going on all the time that that there's still people out there helping. The Mr. Rogers thing,
look for the helpers.
Look for the helpers thing.
Yeah.
There are still people out there doing it, like us, like Jose Andreas's World Central Kitchen, like the Team Rubicon people, like tons of organizations, Salvation Army, that are out there answering the call, no matter what happens.
It's good stuff, man. And I want to pivot a little bit and talk about Afghanistan. A lot of people who watch or listen to our show, obviously, well, unless you have had your head buried under the sand, or you live in a cave somewhere, that this last year there was a pretty rapid drawdown or withdrawal from Afghanistan. And as a result, we had a bunch of people from Afghanistan who needed a safe place to go. And, we're a nonpartisan organization, like aggressively nonpartisan. That said, I have never seen people from both sides of the aisle in the veteran community collaborate so enthusiastically and so hard on something before as they did with bringing Afghani refugees and supporting them, especially the folks who were downrange with them, and knowing that they were bystanders and victims in this whole thing, bringing them here, seeing people from both ends of the aisle work together to bring them here and provide them the support that they needed during a very difficult time was stinking inspiring, and such a credit to the veteran community. When infighting in any community is always a thing, especially, when people are deeply entrenched and firmly entrenched in their beliefs or whatever. But like, it was such a bright, shining spot for a community, and seeing people do great things from both ends of the aisle was just spectacular. And at the center of that mission were some key players, to include the Red Cross. Can you tell us what being involved in that was like, what it was like to meet some of those people and tell some of those stories, and what did you walk away from? What did you learn from that whole thing?
Right. It was, I mean, in no small order, I'm still a little close to it. This was August and September we were working with the Department of Defense at Fort McCoy. Still a lot of people still there at Fort McCoy and some of the other military installations. But it was it feels like the most remarkable thing that I've ever been able to be a part of in a single kind of career setting. And I think the reason that, some of the reasons you stated, this is being not to tell our age here, but this has been a war that has been going on half our lives.
Yeah.
And has involved a lot of people from my family have served over there. And I know you and, friends and family, I'm sure the same, and my wife's family. And so it's very personal, right? Everybody kind of knows somebody. Right. And Red Cross in general, we had been working with tons of people, sending as people deploy, as people return years later, as they need other services. But in this instance, once they announced Fort McCoy as a place in August, it was incredible what we're able to be a part of and help stand up, and who stepped up, to your point, was really remarkable. So we had dozens of volunteers from the Red Cross help out for the first 2 months as people arrived. And it was at the height is around 13,000 people, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Wow.
At Fort McCoy. And so, northwestern kind of Wisconsin area, if you're not familiar. And we had an influx there, and the other military installations the Red Cross is helping at, not just volunteers wanting to sign up to help because this was a historical, that was the word that kept coming up, was historical or historic. It was veterans who were our staff members and our volunteers. And I can share a quote here. Corey Paul from Ohio was one of our just champions. He came out here as a staff member. He had served in the Army National Guard and deployed to Afghanistan in 2013. And he described to me there were just Afghani nationals that helped him and his group identify IEDs and make sure that they stayed safe as they were doing patrols and doing other duty in Afghanistan on the ground. And he signed up. And just a quote from what he said after he had been at Fort McCoy for a month about why it was so rewarding as a veteran. He said, "When I was in Afghanistan, there were so many times where I wanted to take off my gear and go play soccer with the kids, but couldn't. As a veteran, it's doing my soul a lot of good to give back a little bit, to listen, to provide people comfort to people who have experienced a lot of trauma." And that was the mood that I think that why we had so many veterans particularly interested in it was a spirit of like giving back, like that they had been there and seen what people are going through, and knowing that a lot of the folks that evacuated and were here, it was like so many people that helped them directly or indirectly. And so it was amazing to be a part of that and to see and kind of share Corey's story and so many other volunteers on the ground. But I mean, it was an absolutely surreal scene to turn off. This is cranberry country in Wisconsin, right? This is like I stayed at the Cranberry Lodge just outside. I did, literally, where there's like a carved wooden bear, and every room has pictures of cranberry bogs.
Okay.
And you drive 10 minutes up the road and take a right. You get into Fort McCoy, you pass through all the security stuff, and you take kind of a loop around in Fort McCoy. And it's not a military installation where it's not like Fort Hood where people are there constantly. It's like people are in and out for training more so. And in these barracks, or in these kind of residential units for blocks and blocks and blocks, all you saw was people from Afghanistan. And then, you'd see Red Cross folks, you'd see people from the National Guard or there was Coasties there. There was people from every branch was there.
Yeah.
But it was almost entirely, it was just thousands of people from Afghanistan all of a sudden in cranberry country, Western Wisconsin, just absolutely surreal.
Yeah.
And do
they have cranberries in Afghanistan? I wonder if that was like a new concept for them.
I think that, that is a great question. Actually, I do not know.
There's your next article for you.
Yeah. I just to give a flavor of the folks, Abdul was a person I talked with. I just like Corey said, it was, there were a lot of as I'm sure folks who served over there, there's kind of the international language of hand gestures. If you didn't know Pashto or one of the other languages, there are hand signals, hearts, hands over the heart kind of thing. A lot of gesturing to try to kind of with folks that may not have known English. I unfortunately, English is the only language I'm proficient in, but a lot of folks did know English, but kids were just running around being kids, right? And that was super eye-opening. And I started playing soccer with he's probably 5 or 6 years old, and Abdul, his father, came over, and he's there with his 2 brothers, his wife, and he had 3 kids, including a couple of week-old child. And I just said, we got to talking, and Abdul had worked with American service agencies in a role that he had in Kabul. He's from Kabul, grew up in Afghanistan. And he said they got the call that if you are not down at the airport in 2 hours, you're going to miss your spot. He had to bring his family. His wife they had a baby. He was a preemie.
Oh, wow.
Who had been born 10 days earlier. And they had to bring the child, their 2 toddlers, his 2 brothers, and his wife, and bring them to the airport. And he said he showed pictures on his phone. It was the scene that you saw with hundreds of people on a military plane. It was, tense, scary, and just the sense of what people would go through just to be somewhere. I think it gave me an appreciation of what we have in this country.
Oh yeah.
And it also gave me an incredible insight into what that safety and security and sense of freedom, what people will risk to have that in their own lives. So I don't want to get too worked up about it.
Well,
especially after the big weekend with the Bills, I don't want to just keep the emotional guy on the show, but
sobbing
it was, I mean, as you could imagine, I mean, it was like this full, and that was just my experience. Corey said he had those experiences every day as someone who served in Afghanistan, to have it full circle, but to be able to be there for people and kind of when they needed it at this next step of their journey it was nothing short of remarkable.
It's so easy for people who have not been deployed or have engaged firsthand with these people it can be so easy to allow them to become dehumanized in our mind. And Afghanistan has been this country, these poor, innocent civilians, these mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and children and family members who just want to live their lives and have joy and love and food and sleep and shelter. Afghanistan has been beat up for decades and decades and decades, all the way back to pre-Russian occupation. And I mean, they've been through the ringer. But it's easy to see throughout the last several decades of war and conflict over there to see that as the enemy or to dehumanize those people. And in that vein, even though we had bipartisan support from the veteran community to bring those people here, people who didn't have firsthand relationships, there was a spattering of resistance. Mm-hmm. People saying, they deserve the support that we can give them, but not in my backyard, which was very unfortunate to see. And again, the veteran community from both sides of the aisle really did their part to try and educate and deprogram decades of propaganda that made these people not human to the average citizen. So my question for you is, as a storyteller, how important was it for you? Like, you didn't have to convince the veterans and the volunteers that this was a good thing. Mm-hmm. How important was it for you, and is it for you, to tell the stories and to bring humanity back to this community, to these people that deserve it, and to help rally the average citizen who may be resistant because they don't know any better, to bring them on board?
Yeah. I mean, I was honored. I was completely honored to be able to just be some element of their life and to help, like you said, Abdul is a father with a family who's just trying to do a job. I mean, he has an IT degree, like these, and
he
so
had ambitions and goals.
Yeah. So yes, to make it someone to share how, the commonalities, I think was super important. I think one of the things that a lot of folks, and this was a good example of being able to kind of transcend this. I think a lot of people in marketing communications roles, they look for this dream or perfect story. They look for, I think when there's a story that has, of course you want conflict. It's fundamental to any story, but for there to be conflict and for it not to be cookie cutter, for there to be like aspects that are messy and that kind of pull you in different directions, I think that truthfully tells a deeper, nuanced story. Harder to do a lot of times, but I think at the end of the day, if you're sharing that story and acknowledging that this is this is a deeply conflicted area with history, a history of pain and problems. But to be able to share a present day light and a real person connected with it on different sides, whether it's volunteer staff or the person who had evacuated with their family, in whatever instance that is, I think in marketing and communications, I think telling that messier, grayer story, not shying away from it. I think it gives you an opportunity to really connect with people on a lot of other levels, rather than just thinking that that everyone's a monolith. People that want to hear this one story will react this one way. And I think that if you people are a lot smarter. And again, why we are emotional and have reactions over certain things, I think we don't even fully understand. So I think to kind of like give that nuanced, not clear cut version of the story of what people are going through and how you can help. I think that's integral. And we were able to, I think, do that pretty well with a lot of the work we had at Fort McCoy and other places around the country. And it honestly is still happening every single day in Afghanistan proper. I should, acknowledge.
Well, and these folks that are here at Fort McCoy, what happens to them? Are they integrating into our community? And if so, how important is the ongoing education for the average citizen who, again, may be resistant to it?
For sure. So Red Cross, we were there for about 2 months. Our commitment with the Department of Defense wrapped up. Other organizations have been kind of in that place of we were bringing a lot of essential needs, formula, and some of the basic needs, as well as a number of other resources. But so other organizations still doing those things. We're still helping behind the scenes, and of course in Afghanistan. And one small part I missed as well is that we have been helping a lot of people who did serve over there with the processing of this. I mean, through our kind of programs to help veterans and service members, we do a lot of kind of helping people work through things, or just listening and being there for people, because this brought up a lot of triggering aspects and a lot of PTSD and who knows what. But, I think that, as far as kind of, it's a situation where a lot of folks there's sponsorship challenges, and there's issues with, there's a lot of organizations that are helping place people. And I know that process is happening. It's probably not happening as fast as a lot of folks would like. This is definitely a temporary residential situation for them. But that doesn't make it any easier, especially after, after time kind of drags on. But I know I'm hearing stories out of Wausau and Milwaukee and Madison of families settling in, the people, sharing meals and getting down to just the regular things of life, of finding jobs in schools and those kind of things. And it's happening here in Wisconsin. It's happening all around the country. It makes me extremely proud that we had some small part in kind of the welcome to this country for so many people.
We Wisconsinites know how to welcome people. We get them a coat, and then we make a casserole.
Packers coat. There were a lot. I did see there was a lot of Packers gear. There was a lot of Badgers gear that folks were wearing as their kind of like first new T-shirt in the United States.
We introduced them to their first casserole.
Hot dish,
do a potluck,
right?
Man, I could talk to you forever about all this stuff, but I do want to make sure that I get to these links that you sent me, ways that people can get involved. First off, tell us about the Hero Care Network and why somebody would want to click to learn more.
Yeah, a Hero Care Network, and then we've got the Hero Care, the complimentary app.
Mm.
So basically, service member, veteran, military family, lots of resources. Red Cross is actually congressionally mandated to support military and veterans.
Mhm.
And so when it's the kind of thing where a reconnection workshop, if your family is struggling to kind of reintegrate after a deployment and into civilian life again, we do programming around that, including virtual program. We are actually the organization. If you have a family member that's ill, or if you have a childbirth at home and you're deployed abroad,
Mhm.
the American Red Cross is actually the agency that gets you back to the States.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's through our hero care network too. There's also great, assistance things and all kinds of resources in there. So just wanted to share that because Wayne McDonald, one of our volunteer for 35 years with our service to the armed forces team, great guy. He was an Air Force veteran, and he said, I didn't remember anyone giving me the breakdown at that time when I was serving that all the Red Cross had all this stuff for me. And so that's why he's made it his mission to be a volunteer to tell people about these programs and to help people through our Hero Care Network. Yeah.
And even as early as basic training, I was a basic training instructor for the Air Force. And I remember, sometimes tragedies happen back home while somebody was in a training environment. Something happened to their spouse or their parents or a family, something like that. And, the way that we coordinated getting them back home and then reintegrating them back into a training environment was through the Red Cross. So, I mean, for those that don't understand, just like the far reaching impact of this organization, do a little bit of digging, and it's mind boggling just how much good these folks do. And I think that's amazing. So the other thing I want to say, what is this military veteran hero nomination?
We've got an event every year in
Mhm.
Southeast Wisconsin, and there is a military hero honor that we give out as part of that. So if you've got someone in your life who obviously, the word hero gets thrown around a lot, but if there's something special, I think we think in particular of someone who, a service member or veteran who is helping other service members or veterans. There's a nomination form in there to submit for a person for one of those awards. It's a pretty sweet event, and you dress up in a nice tie and you get an honor if we pick you and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
there you go. What's the deadline for submissions for that?
We will extend. I'll give you some breaking news. It will extend until the middle of February now.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure to put these links in our show notes. The
Thank
last
you.
thing that I want to talk about is you wrote a long form love letter to the city of Milwaukee. You're a published author. Tell me about the Milwaukee Anthology.
Yeah, I edited, arranged it, wrote, pitched, threw a party, did a bunch of events. But yeah, the Milwaukee Anthology, Belt Publishing is a great publisher out of Cleveland, and they have just a great focus on the real people and real stories out of the kind of whatever your determination of the geographic boundaries of the Rust Belt. I think they kind of deem it as something between like Fargo down to like near Louisville, out to Western New York, around the Great Lakes. But they'd done a number of these really awesome kind of nonfiction city guides to really get to know who actually lives in a city, the lesser told stories. And I'd written a few other things for them, just kind of still going on that journalism background. And at one point they were like, well, why don't you do the Milwaukee one? And that was new to me, but it was a very deep, it took a lot of time and a lot of knocking on doors. And what it kind of turned out to be was just a great chance to meet so many people that either I had wanted to, people, re-meet people I already knew, or get to know a lot of people, especially people that just kind of came out of nowhere. One of the essays is a number of kids who have migrated from Russia and Ukraine and Lithuania and Poland, who go to St. Sava School on the southwest side of the city. They all wrote little essays about it's kids in elementary school writing essays about what they think about for their own futures in Milwaukee, what Milwaukee means to them. And a lot of other great stories in there, just from people who really live here, and all the, warts and all kind of thing about where we live and why we love it.
Well, definitely worth checking that out. Like I said, one of the most talented and adept storytellers on the planet. Justin, I could talk to you forever, man. It's so good to catch up with you. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you much. And I do hope that you have a piano under that microphone and you'll play us out like a little tune.
Yeah.
Kind of go into your musical background.
Or like a hook comes from off screen.
Yeah. Sandman's going to pull you out of there, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll just get a hang on the line here for just a second. Man, I could talk to that guy forever. Check him out. Check out his book, Milwaukee Anthology on Belt Publishing. Follow the Red Cross. They're doing some amazing things. They continue to do amazing things throughout the country to help people in need, to help veterans and military families in need, to help like everybody that needs help. They're there. Great organization, great dude working for a great organization. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And again, if you listen to the audio only /podcast version of this, I'll be sure to put those links in the show notes when it drops so you won't miss it. But if you're watching this video style live, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place, Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. Central. Appreciate you for tuning in with us, and we'll see you next time.